sacrifice, and we have to read from the whole sense and drift of the teaching. Once you have got the text, we'll start reading. Or others, one of you has to read.
Do you want me to read?
Oh, you have the book today?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay, read. Yes, the whole sense and drift.
The whole sense and drift of this teaching turns upon the interpretation we are to give to the important words yagna, karma, dharma, sacrifice, work, Brahman. If the sacrifice is simply the Vedic sacrifice, if the work from which it is born is the Vedic rule of works, and if the Brahman from which the work itself is born is the Sabda Brahman in the sense only of the letter of the Veda, then all the positions of the Vedist dogma are considered and there is nothing more. Ceremonial sacrifice is the right means of gaining children, wealth, enjoyment. By ceremonial sacrifice, rain is brought down from heaven and the prosperity and continuity of the race are sure. Life is a continual transaction between the gods and men, in which men offer ceremonial gifts to the gods from the gifts they have bestowed on him, and in return is enriched, protected, fostered. Therefore, all human works have to be accompanied and turned into a sacrament by ceremonial sacrifice and ritualistic worship. Work not to be dedicated is accursed, enjoyment without previous ceremonial sacrifice and ritual consecration is a sin. Even salvation, even the highest good, is to be gained by ceremonial sacrifice. It must never be abandoned. Even the seeker of liberation has to continue to do ceremonial sacrifice, although without attachment. It is by ceremonial sacrifice and ritualistic works done without attachment that men of the type of Janaka attain to spiritual perfection and liberation.
Okay, so this will sound very strange, but you must remember that it is not Gita's view, nor is it Srivambu's view. So now what is then? I refer you back to the previous para, the beginning. Here then are the two ideals, Vedist and Vedantist. So let's have a clear idea of these two things and then we will see what is being discussed. The Vedist and the Vedantist. The Vedist is one who knows the Vedas but no spiritual experience. He is simply going according to the words. That is the Vedist. Okay? They only know the words. In the Gita also there's a criticism. And they say that you must do yajna. Okay? And that ceremonial sacrifice. The pouring of ghee into fire and go on reciting the slokas. But there you don't know the meaning of the slokas, but you can't recite the slokas. I have attended one Vedic sacrifice in the opening of a house, and maybe they know, but they go so fast and even mispronounce the words. It is just they are engaged only in the vocabulary. They don't know the meaning of what they are doing. Okay, so that is the Vedist. Now, this Vedic ceremony is used for gaining in the physical world, whether it be success or wealth or enjoyment or having children. Okay, it's all there. So that is one thing. Then the other is the Vedantist. That is the word yajna and karma and all that. Srimda will explain. In the Vedist interpretation, the yajna is restricted only to ceremonial rites. Just pouring ghee into the fire and adding all sorts of twigs and leaves and all sorts of grains. They do that. Maybe there are about 20, 25, 30, and they go on throwing all these things into the fire. And they ask for some boons from the gods. They are sacrificing to the gods and asking for boons. I want children, I want this, I want that. So this is the one way of looking at it. The other way is the interpretation given to Yajna. Okay? That's what Sandra is going to discuss in 2 or 3 paras. The interpretation in the Gita, Yajna means all your karma for the Lord. You don't do it for yourself. That's the difference. And if you do that, the Gita takes on a totally different meaning. That's what is being discussed. So the para we have read just now is not the Gita's understanding of things. Okay? So keep that in mind and we will do it. So it's the whole sense and drift of the teaching turns upon the interpretation we are to give to the important words Yajna, Karma, and Brahma. So, in the Vedist, Vedist interpretation, Yajna means only ceremonial rites. Rite means R-I-T-E, ceremonial actions, whatever you are doing. That is the interpretation given Vedist. And the Vedantist, the interpretation of Yajna is sacrifice of all your actions, all your thoughts, all your mental ideas and everything. This is sacrifice. Constantly think of the Lord and offer it to them. So that's the first interpretation. Second interpretation, karma. Karma on the Vedist interpretation, the shallow interpretation is they do the karma. That means to say, do the Vedic sacrifice. Vedic sacrifice, only the ceremony. But in the Gita, the interpretation for karma is something altogether. The karma is all your works. Whatever you are doing is karma, not only the sacrificial rite. The priests who throw ghee into fire and go on uttering mantras of which they don't know anything at all. So that is the karma in the Vedist interpretation. But the Vedantist interpretation is karma, all your works, whatever you are doing. And every work can be offered to the divine. Whether you are a doctor or engineer or a journalist or whatever you are, okay, or a scholar or a student, all you have to do is to, before starting what you're doing, turn it to the divine. I'm doing it for you in your mind, not in words, and offer it to the divine. Then slowly, that is the interpretation of karma. Then there is one more, Brahma. Okay? So that also is the, we'll see about the Brahma later on. We'll see how the word is interpreted differently, these 3 words in the Vedist and the Vedantist. That is the reason why the Gita seems to criticize the Vedas, that they are those who are interpreting the Vedas only in the Vedist sense. They are showy, flowery, and shallow. But later, some people may come to the conclusion that Gita is criticizing the Vedas. It is not criticizing the Vedas. It is only criticizing the attitude of the Vedist, the one who is using the Veda for the wrong reasons. Because elsewhere, as they will tell you, the Gita is praising the Vedas, okay? Those of knowledge. So with this background, if you read the para, it will be clear to you now. So I am reading each sentence. The whole sense and drift of this teaching turns upon the interpretation we are to give to the important words Yajna, Karma, and Brahma. Sacrifice, work, and Brahman. If the sacrifice is simply the Vedic sacrifice, and the Vedic sacrifice is the Vedist, only reciting slokas and pouring ghee in and doing only the outer act. That is the if the word, not the words if. Huh? That's very important because this is not Swam's view, nor is the Gita's view. If the sacrifice is simply the Vedic sacrifice, if the work from which it is born is the Vedic rule of works, and if the Brahman from which work itself is born is the Shabda Brahman. Now, note the Shabda Brahman, only the words of the scriptures. Okay, Shabda Brahman. This is in one sense, but the word Shabda Brahman also is used because when the Brahman is about to manifest himself, he uses first Shabda, the vibration. The creation of the universe starts with the vibration of Om. And this word, this is a vibration. And the sound it produces is Om. But in India we say Om, but actually in the Vedic, um, the Jewish tradition, it's not Om. Okay? It is something like hmm. I had a friend in America, and I did some work for her in the press, and she sent me a tape. She's not a tape, sorry, a CD, a compact disc. She sent me a disc in which this sound was very clearly recorded, and she told me about it. Okay, so this is the sound, and that is the reason why all the tantric mantras begin with this sound. Humkara, they call it. Okay, so it's a very powerful sound. And my mother said that when first time she heard the sound Om being, she said it took me right to the highest level of where the creation is starting. Okay? Om. So that is the Shabda Brahman. So two interpretations for Shabda Brahman. Merely the words of the scripture or the actual thing. So if it is born and if it is Shabda Brahman in the sense only of the letter of the Veda, because actually Shabda Brahman does not mean that. Okay? But if you interpret it only as the letter, only the words without the deeper meaning, then all the positions of the Vedic dogma are conceded and there's nothing else. So if that's what they mean by these in the Gita, then I have nothing more to say except this. Okay? Now, what he is writing, be very careful. This is the aim of the Vedist, the ones who are reciting the Vedas, only for getting benefits in the physical world. Ceremonial sacrifice, very clearly, only the pouring of ghee into the fire and reciting shlokas. Ceremonial sacrifice is the right means of gaining children, wealth, and enjoyment. Ceremony is not saying this. The Vedist principle is saying this. Ceremonial sacrifice is the right means for gaining children, wealth, and enjoyment. I have a question here, and I wondered whether there is some truth to this. Okay, but sometimes it does work. Okay, we refer to those mothers reciting the rain, rain, rain. We want the rain, but of course it has to be done with full consciousness and full concentration. Okay, then it may have an effect. And all prayers reach the divine. Okay, but then his giving depends on so many other things. So I'm going back to the Vedic interpretation. Ceremonial sacrifice is the right means of gaining children, wealth, and enjoyment. By ceremonial sacrifice, rain is brought down from heaven, and the prosperity and continuity of the race assured. Life is a continual transaction between the gods and men, in which man offers ceremonial gifts to the gods from the gifts they have bestowed on him, and in return he is enriched, protected, fostered. Okay? There is an exchange between the gods and men. Therefore, all human works have to be accompanied and turned into a sacrament. Sacrament, holy, make it holy, by ceremonial sacrifice and ritualistic worship. Note the word rituals. It's only usually restricted only to the outer action. Okay, this is what the Vedic interpretation is saying. Work not so dedicated is accursed. Enjoyment without previous ceremonial sacrifice and ritual consecration is a sin. Okay, even salvation, even the highest good, is to be attained by ceremonial sacrifice only. This is the Vedic wrong interpretation according to Gita. It must never be abandoned. Okay, Gita is not saying this. The Vedic principle is saying this. Even the seeker of liberation has to continue to do ceremonial sacrifice. Even after liberation, he should continue to do ceremonial sacrifice, although without attachment. It is by ceremonial sacrifice and ritualistic works done without attachment that men of the type of Janaka attain to spiritual perfection and liberation. So this is what the Vedis principle is saying about sacrifice. Now comes those own view. Okay? So um, obviously this cannot be a meaning of the Gita. So now you have the whole thing in context. Okay. So uh, next somebody has to read. So Archana, when you have the text, you can read. I don't know if she's there.
Yes, yes, Sangat, I'm there.
Okay, then
So
go
you
ahead.
are
Read. Obviously, this cannot be.
obviously this cannot be the meaning of the Gita, for it would be in contradiction with all the rest of the book. Even in the passage itself, without the illumining interpretation afterwards given to it in the fourth chapter, we have already an indication of a wider sense where it is said that sacrifice is born from work, work from Brahman, Brahman from the Akshara, and therefore the all pervading Brahman. Sarvagatam Brahma is established in the sacrifice. The connecting logic of the therefore and the repetition of the word Brahma are significant, for it shows clearly that the Brahman from which all work is born has to be understood with an eye not so much to the current Vedic teaching, in which it means the Veda as to a symbolical sense in which the creative word is identical with the all pervading Brahman. The eternal, the one self present in all existences, Sarvabhuteshu, and present in all the workings of existence. The Veda is the knowledge of the divine, the eternal. I am He who is to be known in all the books of the knowledge. Vedescha Vedaya. Krishna will say in a subsequent chapter, but it is the knowledge of Him in the workings of Prakriti, in the workings of the three gunas, first qualities or modes of nature, Traigunya Vishaya Veda. This Brahman or divine in the workings of nature is born, as we may say, out of the Akshara, the immutable Purusha, the self who stands above all the modes of qualities or workings of nature. This Traigunya. The Brahman is one but self displayed in two aspects, the immutable being and the creator and originator of works in the mutable becoming Atman Sarvabhutani. It is the immobile, omnipresent soul of things, and it is the spiritual principle of the mobile working of things, Purusha poised in himself and Purusha active in Prakriti. It is Akshara, and Shara. In both of these aspects, the divine being Purushottama manifests himself in the universe. The immutable, above all qualities, is his poise of peace, self possession, equality, Samam Brahma. From that proceeds his manifestation in the qualities of Prakriti and the universal workings. From the Purusha in Prakriti, from this Brahman with qualities, proceed all the works of the universal energy, karma in man and in all existence. From that work proceeds the principle of sacrifice. Even the material interchange between gods and men proceeds upon this principle, as typified in the dependence of being and its product food on this working, and on them the physical birth of creatures. For all the working of Prakriti is in its true nature a sacrifice, yajna, with the divine being as the enjoyer of all energisms and works and sacrifice, and the great Lord of all existences, Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasam Sarva Bhutameshwaram. And to know the divine, all pervading and established in sacrifice, Sarvagatam Yajna Pratishtham is the true, the Vedantic knowledge. There is a footnote. I am reading that.
Yeah.
That is Shloka 8, chapter 8, Shloka 1 to 4. That this is the right interpretation results also from the opening of the 8th chapter, where the universal principles are enumerated. Akshara Brahma, Swabhav, Karma, Sharabhav, Purusha, Adhyajna. Akshara is the immutable Brahman, spirit or self. Atman, Swabhav is the principle of the self. Adhyatma, operative as the original nature of the being, one way of becoming, and this proceeds out of the self, the Akshara. Karma proceeds from that and is the creative movement, Visarga, which brings all natural beings and all changing subjective and objective shapes of being into existence. The result of karma, therefore, is all this mutable becoming, the changes of nature developed out of the original self nature, Sharabhav, out of Swabhav. Purusha is the soul, the divine element in the becoming, Adhidvaita, by whose presence, the workings of karma become a sacrifice, yajna, to the divine within. Adhyajna is the secret divine who receives the sacrifice.
Okay, so very big para, and as usual, it is very, very terse and compact, and we have to expand on the idea. Then it becomes clear. So, and also, we are reading only the essays on the Gita, not the Gita itself. So, he referred to the eighth chapter and also fourth chapter, eighth chapter. But we are studying only that's why I usually, when asked that whether have you read the Gita or not, some of you have read. I know that Tarika has read. I don't know if others have read, but Tarika has definitely read. I know because she often quotes the passages. And also, you can read it in English, or you can read it in Hindi, or you can also read it in Sanskrit original. Anyway, so let's get back to our text. Obviously, this cannot be the meaning of the Gita. So, what is he saying? Because in the Gita, these words are there. All these Yajna, Karma, Brahma. There are many who interpret the Gita according to the Vedist principle. That's what he's saying. Okay. So that is a misrepresentation. The right representation is something else, which we will discuss now. Obviously, this cannot be the meaning of the Gita, for it would be in contradiction with all the rest of the book, where he goes on saying that it is not to be only understood in it, but in the deeper sense it has to be understood, and with great detail. Even in the passage itself, this passage which he is discussing, without the illumining interpretation afterwards given to it in the fourth chapter, and that is, I'm just telling you briefly, in the fourth chapter, he explains what is action and inaction. Okay, I think the other day also we had, but we'll just quickly see what is meant in the Gita by inaction and action. Normally, when you say action, you think of the physical body acting, and inaction means the physical body is not acting. But that is not the Gita's interpretation of action and inaction. Action is sure that you are continuing to do work in the physical world. Now, the question is, inaction is when your consciousness separates itself from your body, mind, life, and it's in an immutable condition. It is not moving at all. It is static. And that's the experience of the Brahman, the experience of the self. So that is the inaction that Gita is speaking about. So Arjuna gets confused. Once he's saying you must act in the world, and first you must get the knowledge and become the non-actor, and then he says you must continue to do war. So he's confused. So in the fourth chapter, this explanation is given to him. That the real inaction is the soul remaining and becoming only a witness. But the work continues in the physical world. And also he points out, Krishna points out, that how can you remain inactive in the physical world? Even if you sit in a chair idly, you are having emotions and you are having thoughts, and that is movement. Therefore, that is karma. So it's impossible to remain inactive in the physical world. Not possible. That can be possible only in the higher planes, in the level 2, where your consciousness is not doing anything at all. It's only watching. Okay? That's the interpretation in fourth chapter. The explanation between action and inaction. And in fact, Gita goes even further away and says that those who are acting in the physical world are really not acting, because they realize that it is nature that is acting through their body, mind, life. And even in action, you can be inactive. And in inaction, that means only the body is lying on a bed or there is action going on. So that is the explanation given in the fourth chapter. Okay. So illumining interpretation. Not about illumining interpretation, afterwards given to it in the fourth chapter. We have already an indication of a wider sense where it is said that sacrifice is born from work from Brahman, Brahman from Akshara, and therefore the all-pervading Brahman, Sarvagatam Brahma, is established in the sacrifice. The connecting logic of the therefore, verse 5, okay, and the repetition of the word Brahma are significant, for it shows clearly that the Brahman from which all work is born has to be understood with an eye, not so much to the current Vedic teaching, in which it means the Veda, as to the symbolic sense in which the creative word is identical with the all-pervading Brahman, the eternal, the one self present in all existences, Sarva Bhuteshu, and present in all the workings of existence. It's a huge sentence and we have to go step by step. So, the interpretation given to Brahman. Brahman is, as we have said, the static condition of the witness self, the Brahman consciousness, and it is static. But if you remember in Life Divine and elsewhere, he says that it is a silence and a static condition that allows the movement to occur. If the static condition is not there, there can be no movement in the physical world. Okay, so that is the one that source. To understand this image again, we can then think of the water behind the dam. The water behind the dam is absolutely calm, quiet, pure, without any rippling. That's the Brahman consciousness. And if that water is not there, when it is let out, how can there be the river below the dam? There cannot be. So the physical world depends on the immutable Brahman consciousness. That's what is being said. In other words, the mutable, infinitely mutable and unceasing mutability, constant movement in the physical world is possible only of the higher immutability of the Brahman. It is that which supports this. Okay, that's what is being said. So that's the Brahman consciousness. For it shows clearly that the Brahman from which all work is born. So now you can imagine what is being said. It is the Brahman consciousness which is absolutely static, and work is born from there. It's the spiritual plane of consciousness, the self, which allows the physical world to come in. So this has to be, from which all work is born, has to be understood with an eye, not so much to the current Vedic teaching, in which it means the Veda, as to the symbolic sense in which the creative word is identical with the all-pervading Brahman. Okay, so there is the symbolic sense you have to take, not the physical sense of the other Vedic interpretation. The eternal, the one self, present in all existences, Sarva Bhuteshu, and present in all the workings of existence. This also we have seen. The divine presence is there at the highest level, transcendent. The divine presence is there in the universe, and that's workings of existence in the universe. And the divine is also there in each individual. Okay. The Veda is the knowledge of the divine, the eternal. And there is a quote here. I am he who is to be known in all the books of the knowledge. Vedaischa Vedya. Vedya to be known. And Vedai by the Vedas. Instrumental case. By the Vedas, I am to be known. That's what Shri Krishna is saying. Krishna will say in a subsequent chapter. So he is praising the Vedas. He is not condemning the Vedas. But it is the knowledge of him in the workings of Prakriti. Okay? The workings of Prakriti in the physical world. The workings of Prakriti are level 1. In the workings of the 3 gunas, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, first qualities or modes of nature, Traigunya Vishaya Veda. So, the Vedas, it's a plural, Vedas, are Traigunya Vishaya. Their object is all beyond the 3 gunas. That's what he said. The Brahman or divine in the workings of nature is born, as you may say, out of the Akshara. So now we've got only 3 minutes and I don't think we can finish. But anyway, because the ideas must be clear. We always refer to 3 levels. Na? So now you can see clearly in Sri Aurobindo philosophy also and in the Gita, the 3 levels are very clear. Level 1, the Kshara consciousness. And what is Akshara consciousness? Your psychic being, which is a divine element in you, is actually developing from life to life. Okay? It is developing. It is Kshara. It is mutable. Kshara means mutable. Level 1. Then there is the Akshara, which is level 2, which is the immutable. That's the self, the Brahman consciousness. In the normal yogic procedure, when your soul comes out of your body-mind life and feels released, it is not in the prison anymore. That is the Akshara Brahman consciousness. Okay? So you are first in the level 1, you are the psychic being which is imprisoned in the body-mind life, Kshara, because it is mutable and the whole universe is also mutable. But your divine element in you also is mutable. In the Akshara, there is no mutability at all, immutable. But, and it is so immutable that there is a dichotomy, there is a complete difference between the physical world and you. You are in a transcendent consciousness at that level. Transcendent because you can experience the transcendent status, even in the level 2. Then there is a level 3, which goes to Purushottama, Purusha Uttama. So you have the Kshara Purusha, you have the Akshara Purusha, and you have the Uttama Purusha. So it becomes Purushottama. So these are the 3 levels, and Sri Aurobindo sticks to this line also. Okay? So now he is explaining. If they keep this in mind, the terms will be very clear. Level 1, our normal condition, Kshara Purusha. Level 2, the spiritual planes of consciousness where there is immutability, Akshara. And finally, at the highest level, both Kshara and Akshara are there, power is there, consciousness is there, and everything is there. Purusha and Prakriti become one at that level. Okay? In the level 2, Purusha and Prakriti are both there but always separate. Always separate. But in level 3, they become one. Okay? So the Brahman is one, but self-displayed in 2 aspects. Okay? And what is that? Purusha and Prakriti. Okay? The Brahman is one, but self-displayed in 2 aspects. He splits himself up, if you want, in that way. The immutable being, which is the level 2, and the creator and originator of works in the mutable becoming, Atman Sarva Bhutani. Atman is the individual soul, and the Sarva Bhutani are the all the creatures in the physical world, all the creatures, all that which is created, is Sarva Bhutani. Okay? So it is the immobile, omnipresent soul of things, and it is a spiritual principle of the mobile workings of things. Mobile workings of things in the physical world. But the physical world is only body, life, and mind, or if you want universally, matter, life, and mind. But behind this, there is a spiritual principle. The Akshara Purusha is there behind, supporting. That's what he said. Purusha, poised in himself, and Purusha, active in Prakriti. When it is active, human beings are not aware of the Purusha active in Prakriti. But when it separates itself and poised in himself, the Purusha is the soul comes out and it knows itself to be Purusha and knows that Prakriti is not It's only instruments given to it for action in the world. Okay. So it is Akshara and Kshara. The Brahman consciousness is both Akshara and Kshara. In both these aspects, the divine being, Purushottama, level 3, manifests himself in the universe. The immutable above all qualities is his poise of peace, self-possession, equality, Samam Brahma. These are, we have discussed this many times, the experience of the self. From that, from the level 2, proceeds his manifestation in the qualities of Prakriti and their universal workings. Qualities of Prakriti, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, and in their universal workings, movement in the physical world. From the Purusha in Prakriti, from the Brahman with qualities, okay, there are Purusha in Prakriti is qualities. They call it also the Nirguna Brahman and the Saguna Brahman. In the physical world, there are qualities, there are features which you can explain. That's the Saguna Brahman. Nirguna Brahman, no qualities, no features at all. And that is the Brahman consciousness. Featureless, immutable, eternal, infinite. That's the description of the Brahman consciousness. And that is his voice of peace, absolute calm, self-possession, you're master of yourself, equality, you're not touched by anything at all. From that proceeds his manifestation in the qualities of Prakriti and their universal workings. From the Purusha in Prakriti, from this Brahman with qualities, proceed all works. And that footnote is there, it's a very complicated footnote. We'll read that. I don't think we can do it today, we'll have to read that next time. In fact, we'll stop here because already 8:38. So we'll do that footnote next time. And that's why I'm stopping at this place where proceed all the works. Okay. So that footnote is pretty complex. We'll have to see that carefully. Okay. Because it refers to another chapter out of it. Chapter 18. Okay. So we stop here today. And au revoir to everybody.
Au revoir, Rangada. Thank you, Rangada. Au revoir.
Thank you, Ranga.
Thank you, Rangada.
Good day.
Au revoir.